If asked on Jeopardy the question, modern game design, my answer would be how players become cogs by organizing and honing their time to accolade levels of habitual precision. Game designers are artists, a combination of creativity and logic and a playful sense. A rare mixture, and one that then must be honed with practice and effort. The game industry still seems unwilling to totally accept these too rare to die, too strange to live creatures. In the book Riding the Beam, the early struggles of game design are elaborated upon, and the struggles of working with physical memory and soldering chips. And while we may have currently ascended from those struggles of computing power austerity, the industry still has not figured out how to properly manage its creativity. If it had, we would know a lot more names than Will Wright, Peter Molyneux, Sid Meier, and Kojima. Isn't it funny that putting a designer's name on a product, the story goes that Robin Williams invented the concept by telling Sid Meier to put his name on the box like Hollywood actors or directors and create a following around his personality, sells so well, but yet the industry does it so seldom.
And a few of my friends and I left Atari to found Activision. And the founding principle from Activision was to get recognized as authors of a creative work rather than just nerds in the back room. And the real impetus was when we had this discussion with the CEO of Atari, and they said that we were no more important to the game than the person on the assembly line who put it together.
The primary conflict in Riding the Beam is that the big companies of the time like Sierra Entertainment just wanted to get as many games out as possible in as short a time as possible to maximize profit, a practice that would later nearly destroy the entire games industry, and had it not been for Nintendo, we'd still likely be putting quarters into machines someplace.
Even alive then, the video game business crashed in 1983. What happened was very simply what Activision did, as our questioner said, opened the floodgates. We were very successful, making money hand over fist, and people says, I can do that. And venture capitalists stepped up and started funding these companies to do just what we're doing. But when we were doing it, there were only about 10 people in the world who could do this, who knew how to do this. It was very left brain and right brain intensive. You had to be extremely technical and still be creative, and you had to figure out what's fun and all those things. And they were hiring high school kids who said, yeah, I can program a computer. And so the quality of the games really crashed. I mean, I'm talking about a time when there was no GDC. The equivalent of GDC was when the Activision game programmers and the Atari game programmers ran into each other at the food court at a local mall. I mean, that was it. So there wasn't the talent base necessary to do great games.
Early game designers like David Crane, who designed the superb Pitfall for the Atari 2600, had only their fellow designers to work with and confide in. The industry only saw nuts and bolts and cogs. This practice didn't suddenly come to an end after the video game crash and gaming's resurgence to the juggernaut of media we know it as today. So much so that it has surpassed movies and music combined by 240% as of 2019. In fact, in 2017, for every $10 spent on music and movies, there was $17 put into gaming. Yet all we often hear are cries of the skyrocketing cost of development and the end to profits. And I wonder then, how have stock prices gone up? How has market value gone up for the games industry? The point being that no matter how much the industry has progressed, there's been one truth. It's controlled like Hollywood studios controlled actors during the golden age. Indies are helping to dismantle that hold, and the increasing transparency of developers and communication between players is fundamentally changing that hold. But the hold remains the same. The control isn't going away, there's just new titans coming to get a piece of the pie, Amazon and Google. So the lowly game designers, programmers, developers, and yes, players who generated all this boom are still often the low man on the totem pole. If one thinks this practice has changed, look at what happened to Kojima, which is where I get to the point. Games like Fallout Shelter, in my opinion, are exaggerating this issue. The conversation of games as art goes out the window when the game is designed to be no different than my niece's hamster, living to eat, shit, breathe, and run on the wheel. Sure, Fallout Shelter is one of the better mobile games. It took what is great about game design, finding creative solutions to technical limitations. Technical limitation being the phone and mobile experience. And there are terrific and interesting games created just because of this barrier. A game such as Reigns, for instance, where the player makes decisions as a king over multiple generations via swiping on their phone left or right. This is where the game is still art, and that includes mobile gaming. The line is crossed when commerce, gambling, behavioral psychology, the new industry solution to knowing that oversaturation blows the entire thing up, comes into play and becomes pretty dominant. That's when life begins to imitate art instead of the other way around. Which isn't me trying to be quasi-intellectual or wax poetic, it's me seeing that when my nephew was opening loot boxes on Apex Legends, his eyes were as big around as saucers, and my niece started yelling, "Open more! Open more!"
Last loot box. Yes! Oh, I've been wanting one of the Winter skins.
The behavior being rewarded and the sensation is totally different than when my nephew and I beat Overcooked 1 and 2 together. Overcooked, like any other great game, required communication, timing, skill, all the elements we know from gaming. They required tight programming, animations, music, and writing, so that all these things came together to form a benevolent media experience no different than seeing a quality film or reading a good book or hearing a favorite album. The actor Jack Black's story about his son spending $1,000 on mobile games because of a fundamental misunderstanding that gems are not play money but real money isn't an outlier. It's a trend.
This one game he just discovered, and the thing is they get you because it's like the app is for free. But then I'm just checking my emails one day, and there's 30 emails of like receipts for this app. And it's in-app purchases where they get you. And it's this dumb game where you got like monsters and stuff, and every monster you gotta buy it. And you need to buy like diamonds and jewels. And it costs 99 cents for a diamond. But of course, my boy, he doesn't know. He's just like, I'm gonna get the big sack of diamonds. It's $100 a throw. $100. This game is designed for children. It's marketed to children, and then there's a $100 thing in app. And there's 30. Okay, do the math. There's like 30 receipts on my computer, so it's like, it's well over 1,000. It's like 3,000. Mother-loving dollars. And I have a sit down, I take Sammy, I sit him down, I say, Sammy, you gotta understand that money is real.
Sure, Fallout Shelter is one of the better mobile gaming experiences, but that isn't an especially high bar. They took Fallout into the mobile game world, like they took it into the live service MMO Lite world, and they sell endless, overpriced litter online. I mean, I'm not against the bobblehead, the mug, replica power armor battery, but Bethesda has gone the route of if it ain't tied down, it's for sale, which could be put in a dictionary as the definition of sardonic hypocrisy at best. The Vault Boy, a symbol of corporate greed in modern America, the unfortunate fact that foxes are often in charge of the henhouses anymore, and government and business are in bed together for the most part, has become what it stood against. The idea of Bethesda, since it seems to have been lost on you, is that the government and Vault-Tec sold out the American people, and then went further and used them in Nazi-style experiments to configure their new Reich with the Enclave in charge. Of course, Bethesda has gone the opposite route and chosen to use Vault Boy as a friendly neighborhood figure no different than Ronald McDonald or the smiley face at your local Walmart.
Ronald McDonald in Cheeseburger Chase.
It's a good time for a computer game with Grimace.
The computer whiz.
Getting Hamburglar through the maze.
There he is. Hamburglar's just standing there. That's no fun.
I know a way to make a Hamburglar run.
Rubble, rubble, rubble.
It's amazing what Hamburglar will do for a McDonald's cheeseburger.
It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's.
And so maybe if I buy into the idea, there's an argument I make to myself that the time gating and soft caps that are so rampant in mobile games are wise, and that they likely match a person's available time to play them. Commuting to work, hop on the phone, and do a couple of things. Get off the phone, which is why they run ads to cover the top, bottom, peripherals of your screen and either force or option 30-second adverts for in-game currencies. They still win on these people. In fact, I remember seeing my dad, a lifetime strategy game player who beat Shogun the Roller on the NES, played the board game Risk well, had an addiction to Red Alert, Command and Conquer, Dune, Axis and Allies, be sucked in by Clash of Clans, and become frustrated, resigned, and cynical like the rest of us. It wasn't in his lexicon to talk about games like we do on stream or in these videos, but he knew a bad deal when he saw it. I was disappointed in the industry that, as of the time that he left this earth, games had gotten worse. And that final game my dad would get to play, the final reflection of where the medium had gone, was my dad saying, "They keep trying to get me to spend money, but I won't. So every time I log in, someone has raided my base. I build it up, log in, and it's destroyed again. Yes, there is something addicting, craving, and enticing about these games. That's the problem. The frustration and eventual triumph that makes beating Halo on Legendary or getting 3 stars in Overcooked is overridden by an injection of a narcotic called microtransactions. Endless boosts of power that, like any drug, are only as good as the next hit. Fallout Shelter, a game that took me a year and a half to review, so I try to get every achievement before doing these videos, and had to eventually hang it up as the last achievement to get 20 legendary heroes was a direct ploy at more lunchboxes, the game's friendly loot boxes, is not as malignant as some, but makes no effort to resist the craving. Bethesda and ZeniMax have turned IPs that represented grand visions and groundbreaking technology in Elder Scrolls and Fallout into endlessly profitable franchises by running them as services. This includes mobile games, toys, clothes, coffee mugs, pajamas, you name it. And underlying it, the software itself. I'm a free market guy, but the fact is every time any system goes to any extreme, bad things happen. There was much talk about regulating the games industry, their love affair with loot boxes, but little has happened to outrage people since, so like our tolerance of school shootings, it gets put on the back burner. I dislike regulation on principle. I think it often acts more to shore up the big guy than it does to help the little guy. But the fact remains that when we didn't regulate the banks, the market crashed in 1870, 1929, 2008, and this young games industry has already crashed once. So I would make the argument that any game that puts loot boxes into its product gets an M rating by default, and in the ESRB rating it's listed contains loot boxes. These loot boxes must also show their chance to drop the gear that the player is after. Regulation and business can live in peace. I'll be the last person to say that cat houses shouldn't be in Nevada, or what you do in your own home or isn't your own business, but you'd be pressed to convince me that, like the candy cigarettes that used to be sold in convenience stores of yesteryear, having 8-year-olds buy loot boxes for bragging rights with their school buddies that explode in a glamorous orgasm of color on their shiny digital display isn't preconditioning a tendency to gamble.
Oh yeah, you got the goods.
The system exists to optimize. A regulator acts to balance it. And to me, the recent phenomenon of the games industry trying to squeeze every bit of blood out of the stone it can and optimize the spending upon their software is worse than gambling. At least in a vending machine or at a casino, you actually win something tangible. You win a little plastic toy or real cash money and prizes. But with an always online game with loot boxes, what you're doing is leasing a game so that you can buy temporary digital flares temporarily. Imagine a casino where you don't have to pay all the costs associated with keeping a physical location with food, workers, heating, cooling, bathrooms, etc. Mobile games have devolved largely into remote gambling houses. What is typically cash money and prizes at a casino is replaced by a short-lived digital trinket that an artist and animator put together in an evening, and that same reward can be cycled through endless players forever, willing to buy, make Bitcoin, and take their chance at the big wheel. The gaming market has seen little balancing, and these are youthful days for the immediately powerful but woefully young games market. Already one crash to its name.
So venture capitalists stepped up. They spent $2 million on this company, $2 million on that company. In one 6-month period, 30 companies showed up doing video games that weren't in the brochure at the last trade show. And we looked at each other and said, the crap they're putting out, they're not going to be in business a year from now. We were right. We didn't realize when we said that every one of them going out of business was going to completely destroy the market. And what happened there was people, they had a warehouse full of games and they go out of business. So some liquidator comes in, pays the bankruptcy trustee $3 a piece to buy them out of the warehouse, retails them or wholesales them for $4 and tells the retailer, you can sell these for $5 a piece. And those people who were alive for that era, you walked into a Toys R Us or a KB Toys and there was this barrel in front of the doors filled with 2,600 cartridges, just random 2,600 cartridges, $5 a piece, $5 a piece. So kid tells dad, you know, I want the latest Activision game under the Christmas tree. So they're about $40. Dad walks into KB Toys and says, wait a minute, I can buy 8 games for my $40. I'm going to be a hero. So in one Christmas, sales of new games went to 0. There were 20 million cartridges out there in those barrels that had to sell through first before anything we were doing could be sold as a new game.
Now, the rumor is too big to fail, they say. But I think any economic downturn may see a different story play out. If someone has extra spending money, sure, I'll buy a Nuka Quantum to get to the next quest, or a loot box to help me guard the door, maybe. Probably not, so buy 6 more. But if it's groceries or loot boxes? And this fact outweighs Bethesda devising a creative concept of survivors in a vault who can level up, be equipped with armor and weaponry, craftable and lootable, see their stats rise, and offer the players the same modicum of freedom any other mobile strategy game allows, because it is also plagued by all the standard fare. Boosts to speed things along, loot boxes to acquire gear and better survivors faster, pet boxes to boost these survivors, robots to loot for you and maintain your vault, all for sale. This is where the wise part about managing time expectations goes out the window, because those folks are largely not the one playing these games. I, for instance, will not play mobile games, not because of some largely impotent protest or stick my nose up at them. Like I said, I think they can be art. I think there's some great mobile games, but simply because I don't have the time. This week, for instance, I needed to see my nephew to school. We were up at 6, he was on the bus by 7. I spent my day writing and working on these videos or helping my family. I pick him up at 5, he goes to archery practice, I cook dinner, we all eat at 7 p.m. We have 2, maybe 3 hours of free time before bed. And I don't want to use what little time I have to eke out to exist on a game full of arbitrary soft caps and a chronic longing to access my credit card information. Sure, I played the game for over 100 hours to review it. How'd I do it? Every day, before I'd start my stream, I'd sprint to the soft cap. I paid what I felt was fair at the very beginning, $10 for the starter pack, because no, I do not believe in games piracy, and I do not think that games should be free. I think they're largely underpriced. Clearly, my side of this argument is the opposite side of the debate. It's the arbitrary spending, like gambling, that's becoming the kick in the head. And I refused to buy anything else after that $10 starter pack, because I thought fair was fair. And in a perfect world, Fallout Shelter to me is a $10 game. It's devoid of microtransactions, time gates, and soft caps that exist only to artificially inflate playtime and generate the digital carrot on a stick that all the in-game purchases represent. As I say, playing as a lowly starter pack buyer, it took me a year and a half to garner every achievement but one. I still have much I could do, in fact, that at this point I simply refuse to do. So that while Fallout Shelter is far from the most obnoxious in the category of mobile games, it was the first to my mind to mainstream the practice, and that's why it's the center of this video. The Gotcha mobile game event was a sideshow, developers unique to the space and limited to that space, and so long as it was quarantined, oh well. When Bethesda, an acclaimed AAA studio, came in for some of that sweet microtransaction pie, we were off to the races. Fallout Shelter is the exact practice of Clash of Clans or Reign of Legends, just in a different costume. In fact, any other cash cow mobile game. It's licensed, it plays better, it hides its true nature far better, but the fact is, it's just as insidious. And it's not people like myself playing these games. It's my 5-year-old niece, with preschool 3 days a week and life on a tablet in the meantime. It's my 10-year-old nephew, being a country kid, has a 2-hour commute both ways, and so has to fill out his time accordingly. They fill it with screens. And I'm not some grumpy Philistinian boomer who thinks that they ought to crack open a book. I don't think that'd be the worst thing for them though. But because I believe games are an art form, and some of my best memories and experiences were formed in gaming with friends, with family, and what would have tainted those memories was the idea that we all had to collect our money to inch out just one more turn, or to buy every single die roll we took on Monopoly. Because that's all loot boxes are. They're you spending money to roll the dice, when you used to have the physical dice in your hands. Imagine Wii Bowling with microtransactions or a daily pin limit. It just isn't right, and it limits the art. And this is an argument that may come across as uppity, or one has to remember that those that listen to this video and people like me that make these videos, we're still in the minority after all. Every single time a schoolhouse gets shot up, first thing they start talking about is the gamers.
Well, do violent video games cause violence?
Underlying fear expressed by parents during public hearings that video games lead to violence.
The gun violence has more to do with video game weapons than real ones, right?
Are they going to become violent just by playing Grand Auto Theft and Halo and these games?
There's been plenty of research out there which shows a link between violent video games and aggression.
Violent video games increase aggressive behavior.
These video games, to me, are murder simulators, is what they are.
He was trained to kill with Call of Duty and other video games.
You could go back just a few years. When the Columbine shooting happened, they felt that those kids who did that, it wasn't a symptom of bad parenting or easy access to weaponry maybe, but doom and video games. There was a morality police that would check on games because they were seen as demonic. And so that's why these arguments matter, because we still have something to prove to the world. And if this decision by the industry turns out to have dangerous repercussions, we will be set back. The fact is, the people playing these games are, by and large, children with the free time to do so. They're not going to go on 2,000-word rants like myself about banks and the failings of total deregulation. They are seeing the bright, shiny colors that drove me bananas when I played Fortnite Save the World. They are my niece saying, "Open another one. Open another one." Fallout Shelter gets a 1 out of 3.